So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on COVID-19 impacting on football clubs and players. For those who do not know me, my name is Gonçalo Almeida. I'm a Portuguese attorney at law. I'm also the CEO and co-founder of the Portuguese law firm Almeida Dias and Associates, with the headquarters in Lisbon, Portugal, and offices in Brazil, Egypt, and Iran. Now, we've all been facing this new reality. COVID-19 has affected us at all levels, both at a professional and personal level, and of course, society in general, to which football was not an exception. Now, our aim of today is to contribute with in a constructive manner towards some of the key aspects of this impact of COVID-19 on African football, and simultaneously address some of the challenges that we faced because of that new reality. Now, for that single purpose, we have an outstanding lineup of guest speakers, people who have an extraordinary experience at an international level in terms of international football, but above all, mostly in terms of African football. Also, we will have together with us Miss Mimi Hawass, BBC Africa winning journalist. I mean, she waives any further introduction. She will kindly assist us with moderate this webinar. And on my side, what I can say is that since I've been working for the last 15 years practicing sports law almost on an exclusive basis, after having worked for FIFA as a legal counsel at the player status department, I hope I can also add some value to this discussion. Again, thank you all for joining us. Welcome on board, and do enjoy the webinar. Mimi, the floor is yours.
Gonçalo, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. Yes, hello, I'm Mimi Hawass. I'm your moderator for today's topic. Very important topic about the impact of COVID-19 on African football. As we know, all sectors across the world have been affected by this pandemic, and Africa is no different. Welcome to all of you who've registered. I'm sure a lot of you are at home and some of you from work. Of course, thank you very much for joining us. In the last 10 to 15 minutes of this discussion, I'll be taking questions, so please do send them in. As Gonçalo has said, we have a stellar lineup of key figures in African football. Gonçalo will be taking part in our discussions, but also joining us is a man that knows a thing or two about African football, the former CAF General Secretary, and as well, he's the CEO of HEA Sports. Please welcome Hisham El Amrani. Welcome, Hisham.
Thank you.
And as well joining us, pleasure, and as well joining us on the panel today is an African football legend, a Ghana Black football legend. He's currently the CAF Deputy General Secretary, Anthony Bafo. Hello.
Bonjour and good afternoon. Salam alaikum.
Salam alaikum. As well, joining us is another African football legend, former Cameroon international, and us here in the English Premier League, we know him from his time at Chelsea and Real Madrid. He's currently the president of FIFA Africa. Welcome, Jeremy Jita. Bonjour.
Bonjour. Bonjour, Mimi. Hello, everyone.
And also making up our stellar panelists is someone that's no stranger to Nigerian football. He's the chairman of Enyimba FC, 2 times African champions. Please welcome here, Felix Anyasi Agu. Welcome.
Thank you, Mimi. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you. All right, let's get straight into it. Jeremy, I'm going to start with you. Jeremy will be speaking in French. We do hope you'll maybe answer a question or two in English. We'll try and get him back to speaking English during his time when he was playing here in England. Hisham will translate his French answers into English. So Jeremy, I'm going to start with you. Did FIFPro Africa or even FIFPro put in place any protocols to protect African players and their contracts during this pandemic?
Thank you, Mimi. Hello again to all the participants. First of all, I would like to apologize because, as you said, I will intervene in French because I'm much comfortable. So, sorry for that. So, coming back to your question, je dois dire que depuis l'apparition du COVID-19 qui a causé l'arrêt brusque de toutes les compétitions et des championnats dans le monde entier, la FIFPro a activement participé aux discussions et aux négociations avec toutes les parties prenantes, en particulier la FIFA, lors de la rédaction des directives publiées en avril et envoyées à ses associations membres. La FIFPro Afrique, dont je préside, s'est engagée avec la CAF pour assurer un suivi et une bonne mise en œuvre de cette directive à travers le continent. La FIFPro Afrique a également apporté un soutien individuel à tous ses membres. Ce que je peux ajouter, c'est que ce n'est malheureusement pas ce qui s'est passé sur le terrain. Nous avons de nombreux rapports de nos membres qui signalent de nombreuses violations de contrats. Mais je peux vous dire ici, nous allons continuer à soutenir nos membres, nous ne les laisserons pas tomber. En ce qui concerne leurs droits, c'est assez simple, hein? Les joueurs africains doivent jouir des mêmes droits que tout autre employé ou footballeur dans le monde entier. Les dispositions contractuelles doivent être respectées pendant la pandémie et les joueurs doivent être protégés en conséquence, notamment sur leur santé physique et mentale. C'est ce que je peux dire pour la première question.
So I'll take over from here and have the honor of translating this content for Jeremy. In a nutshell, what he has said is that since the start of the COVID crisis, FIFPro actively and participates in discussions and negotiations with all the key stakeholders, and particularly FIFA, when drafting the guidelines published in April. And FIFPro Africa has engaged with CAF as well to ensure follow-up and proper implementation of these directives across the continent. FIFPro Africa also provided individual support to its member. This is unfortunately not what has happened on the ground, as they have noticed and have received numerous reports from their members that show that there are many breaches of contracts. So to be clear here, what FIFPro Africa is saying is that they will not members down and they will activate them. And regarding the rights of African football players, it's quite simple. They must enjoy the same rights as any other employee or footballer in the world, and specifically for contractual provisions that must be respected during pandemic times such as these, and players also must be protected accordingly. And that also includes their physical and mental health.
All right, thank you very much for that, Jeremy. Gonzalo, I'm going to bring you in here because of your sports legal background. Talking about players' contracts being protected during this time, FIFA came out with regulations and recommendations to clubs how to protect players' contracts and as well as their transfers during this pandemic. Is it all encompassing, or does it favor, do you think, clubs more?
Well, thank you for the question, Mimi. Actually, FIFA guidelines issued in early April this year. First of all, there was a need for FIFA acting as a world football's world governing body to intervene. We're facing a unique situation, a serious one, which is affecting drastically football in general. So there was this need for FIFA to intervene, and they did it in a very swift, very quickly, in a very swift manner. It's not easy at all, as you can all imagine, to gather all the stakeholders and issue these guidelines in just a few weeks' time. So the guidelines itself, I don't think the aim is to protect or privilege some against instead of others at all. The aim is to protect football in general. The idea here is to establish some principles to guide us on principles of non-binding nature, so that the stakeholders in general can know what they expect. Okay, so the guidelines are not in favor of any. The general suggestion is always reach amicable settlements, discuss. There is a need for flexibility, for communication, and at an ultimate level for solidarity between players and clubs, because without clubs, players wouldn't make any point, and the other way around, okay? But national law at the end is the one that should be the main guidance, apart from reaching amicable settlement.
Absolutely. Felix, I'm going to bring you in here. Gonzalo's talking about solidarity there for the players. You, as the chairman of Enyimba FC, how are you managing this crisis, and how are you protecting your players?
Well, as a football club, it has not really been easy without football. It is like an airline that can't fly, or a hotel that cannot accommodate its guests. This truly an unprecedented times at the moment. And we, like others, will find a way to adjust, like every other organization.
What way are you adjusting, Felix? Felix, what way are you adjusting?
Like, the situation that we have at hand. Nobody created this pandemic, so it came unexpected, and with where the situation is, we must find a way to adjust. For procedures put in place for our players, right now, our players are not in camp, even if we have been in constant touch with them, encouraging them to practice and promote safety measures. We have also been paying their salaries. You know what it is to be paying salaries. This is almost about 3 months when football was stopped in Nigeria. And we have also sustained paying them their salaries so they can also take care of themselves and their families. We know they are working and they are keeping fit, and that's very good for us. For us as a club, aside from measures or protocols, we will continue to do our best to protect the welfare of our staff and officials, so that when normalcy
let me just interject. Can I just interject there? Yes, of course. Can I just interject there? Because you've talked about you've paid your players their salaries over the past 3 months. Mamelodi Sundowns, the president has spoken about how they will be paying their players throughout this pandemic. Possibly, we don't know how things are going to pan out. Possibly pay cuts. Do you think that's something that you might be looking at in the long term?
Well, it all depends. Like I said earlier, it's been very tough. The club is being supported by the state government. It depends on the position of our government. But right now, our government has also been very supportive. So we don't have that, thinking, but if situation changes, we will do the needful. It's also not easy for government. It depends on the steps government will take in the club.
Okay, thank you, Philip. come back to chat to you in a bit more about this. Anthony, I'm going to bring you in here. We're hearing Felix speaking about how they're trying to look after the players as best as they can during this pandemic. CAF just last week announced $10.8 million to help its 54 member associations. Can you break down for us how you feel that money might go towards helping COVID-19 and the member associations, possibly clubs like Enyimba FC?
Thank you very much, Mimi. Greetings to the entire audience. Bonjour, tarde. And I can only say that in the last finance committee meeting, there's another finance committee meeting going to happen very soon, where CAF is even looking at how they can further assist most of the MAs. We have taken this situation into consideration and to do the best we can do in a very good manner. And what is very important also in this situation, to have a permanent dialogue with the stakeholders. This is very, very important, to include, of course, the member associations, to include the unions, etc., and see the best way forward, how we can assist each other. If I say each other, it's a dialogue. It's not only financially. If you talk about players, you talk about the psychology of a player as well. How did he cope during that time with the entire situation? So as you can see, that we are really in permanent contact with the members and the other stakeholders. And I must also send you greetings from the president. For him, he said that the most important thing is the health of the players, is the health of the stakeholders, and the health also of the fans. And this is the message I should convey to all of you and to all the viewers.
Okay, well, it's great to get that message from the president of CAF. Hisham, let me bring you in. We've spoken about the money that CAF have put forward to help their member associations. FIFA as well, they brought their FIFA Forward program, $500,000 a bit earlier to help the member associations. Obviously, a lot of African football fans will be asking checks and balances, transparency, and how that money is going to be spent to help member associations, clubs, players during COVID-19.
Well, just like what my brother Anthony has said, the stakeholders approach is extremely important in times of crisis, but also in normal times. So those funds, they should have ideally a process of being earmarked so that those that are in need the most can utilize those funds and that we can still have food on the table for the livelihoods of players, for the staff, in addition to the federations and the different stakeholders. So I do hope that considering FIFA and CAF together, it's about $700,000, which is that they communicate all together with the leagues and see how that money can be used, how guidelines can be provided as well, because this is just an exceptional situation, so that also the clubs and the federation can sustain themselves financially in the longer run. That relief fund cannot come back every single time. But I would say, in terms of the topic today, I do hope one thing, that the players and the technical people and that the staff working in clubs and federations are being paid in a decent way. I'm not saying necessarily fully, as it was explained, but that their contracts are respected. Because we can sometimes think of the level of Enyimba or Al Ahly or Raja Casablanca, but I'm thinking about all the amateur clubs, all the amateur players, all the more than 22,000 professional players that are evolving on the continent. I do hope that the majority of them will be protected and that the clubs take that into consideration as well. But all in all, to conclude this point, whatever is done by a federation or clubs in general, it should be communicated to the wider audience so that everybody understands the work that is being undertaken.
Absolutely.
Can I come in?
Gonzalo? Yes, please, go ahead.
No, what I wanted to say, what is very, very important, not only the way we do it at CAF or FIFA level, that we include all the stakeholders, but also within the various MAs. It's very important to have the dialogue with each other, to have, again, I'm emphasizing on the stakeholders, to participate in this dialogue, to participate in certain panels so they can exchange. You know, they will not always be one, but then at least a decision can be taken together, and the protocol has been respected. Thank you.
All right, Andy, you were talking about a dialogue between your member associations. What have they been telling you their challenges have been during this pandemic, and what support that they need?
You see, first of all, what we did, for instance, if you talk about competitions within the member associations, we also sent to everyone to give us the plan, the strategy. And now you see we are on Zoom. I've been following a lot of panels within the MAs and to see what they're talking about. Of course, is resumption of the league, then payments of sponsors stops because the competition is not ongoing, and FIFA and CAF have taken that to consideration, and that's why also the support, because we know what is going on in the respective member associations. To tell you also a bit further, panels were created within the confederations. We have, for instance, from our the acting general secretary Abdelbar, and then Samson Adamo, the competition director. So it goes across all the confederations, because it's not only one problem in Africa. Everybody has his own problem and needs to find a tailor-made solution to it.
Or I'm going to come back to you in a second, Anthony. Gonzalo, let me bring you back in terms of the legal ramifications around all of this. If there are players that cannot afford a legal challenge in terms of the rights that they need during this time to be supported, what can they do, Gonzalo?
Well, that's a very practical question, Mimi. In reality, players' unions, they have a major role in that regard. Either at a national level or FIFPro, they can provide legal assistance up to a certain extent. Actually, even FIFA, again, in a very proactive manner, they have introduced a pro bono, legal aid pro bono program in disputes, within disputes of disciplinary nature, before the ethics committee, whereby proceeding costs can be waived, costs with transportation and accommodation can be covered by FIFA, and the pro bono legal counsel can be also provided by FIFA. So apart from these, I think it is important to say that COVID-19 is a very serious and unfortunate reality, which has with negative effects all over the world, and football as well, as I've mentioned previously. But in terms of outstanding salaries, in terms of contractual breaches or non-compliance towards the payment of salaries, this has been a reality for a long time. I mean, when I started working in 2001 with Player Status Department, we had already a volume of labor disputes, which was quite big. And even, for instance, again, in a good initiative from FIFA, they have introduced this players fund recently in February, together with FIFPro, in order to financially assist players who have not received their remuneration because their former clubs went bankrupt. So this is the reality which is actually affecting everyone. And in this particular situation, I mean, there's good people and bad people, good examples and bad examples everywhere. Don't take me wrong. But yeah, we can always see that there are some clubs trying to take advantage of situations like this, difficult moments, either because of war or financial crisis or political crisis, and trying to take advantage in order just to waive their responsibility and avoid making payments. We have clients, for instance, in Romania, who have salaries around 10,000 euros per month, and they're collecting 300 euros unilaterally imposed by the clubs. I mean, is this proportional? No way. So unfortunately, this is a reality, but in terms of access, and going back to your concrete question, I think apart from Players Union and FIFA in disciplinary decisions, law firms, we are used to deal with players, with clients who have difficulties to pay our legal fees because they have not received their salaries already for a long time. So it's easy to adjust the payment of the legal fees up to the moment when they actually end up collecting their outstanding remuneration.
Yes, absolutely. Jeremy, I'm going to bring you back into the conversation here because Gonzalo has spoken about players that have had their salaries delayed for months. We do know that Gabon are one of those countries that FIFA themselves on the website have posted about that. How'd you help to support these people that haven't had salaries paid for months, the players, plus now the pandemic has hit?
Bien, permettez-moi d'apporter une précision afin que nos auditeurs comprennent bien. Il me semble important de préciser le cadre d'intervention de la FIFPro Afrique. Nous travaillons en étroite collaboration avec la CAF, les fédérations nationales, les ligues. Chacune de ces parties prenantes a un rôle important à jouer dans le cadre du développement du football. Ça, il fallait que j'apporte cette précision. Pour revenir à votre question, beaucoup a été fait par nos syndicats membres, mais on ne peut pas dire autant pour les ligues ou d'autres parties prenantes. Les clubs ne respectent pas leurs obligations contractuelles dans de nombreux pays en Afrique. Ça, on le sait. Les joueurs sont privés d'un système judiciaire fiable pour faire valoir leurs droits. Voyez-vous, M. Gonzalo, nous avons des fédérations où il n'y a pas de chambre de résolution de litige. Vous comprenez? Pour vous répondre précisément à la question, Mimi, il sera inacceptable que des joueurs reçoivent des colis alimentaires. Sincèrement, ça montre que nous avons encore beaucoup à faire. Je me souviens, notre secrétaire général, Jonas Hoffmann, que je peux citer ici, a déclaré à juste titre « Cette crise souligne la fragilité des salaires, des conditions en dehors des ligues européennes, élites du football professionnel et la façon dont certains clubs traitent mal les employés dès que l'argent manque. » Bien évidemment, nous serons là pour eux. Nous allons continuer à les défendre sur le terrain. C'est quelque chose que je voulais ajouter.
So to come in and take the floor from you, Mimi, what Jami is saying is that to clarify for the listeners, very importantly, the framework of intervention of FIFPro Africa should be defined. They work in close collaboration with CAF, with the national federations and league, and each of these stakeholders have a very important role to play in the development of football. Much has been done by their unions within the different countries, but it's not necessarily the same from all the other stakeholders. And many clubs, unfortunately, in the continent does not respect the contractual obligations for the players. So sometimes you end up with players that are deprived of a reliable legal system to assist their rights or their claims. So as Jeremy said, in some cases, there's not even a litigation chamber that can deal with those cases. And also the fact that some players receive food packages, there's something wrong about that. This is not where we should be. This shows that there's still a lot of work to do. And Jeremy quoted his General Secretary of FIFPro World, Jonas Hoffmann, saying that this crisis actually indeed highlights the fragility of wages and conditions outside the elite European League and professional football, and the way in which certain clubs treat their employees badly when money is lacking. So what FIFPro now is very much aware of what is happening on the ground, thanks to the work of members in the field, and they are trying to work hand in hand with all the stakeholders.
Thank you very much for that. You've actually touched upon the next question that I wanted to ask Jeremy. Jeremy, as you've spoken, FIFPro Africa, you've been giving packages to players. For example, in Egypt and Cote d'Ivoire, FIFPro even tweeted about it last week. We're talking about the legalities, but once that's not sorted, there's the human aspect, very real human aspect of players, the resulting food packages. What more can we do to support them?
Again, j'espère que oui, malheureusement sur le terrain, les nombreuses associations ou ligues de football ne sont pas habituées à dialoguer, comme quelqu'un a parlé ici. Mais je pense que nous, en tant qu'association, syndicats, pour aider nos syndicats, nos syndiqués, ce que nous faisons d'habitude, nous allons vers eux, nous les écoutons. Ils nous racontent comment ça se passe dans les clubs. Nous constatons que beaucoup ont des arriérés de salaires. Alors, qu'est-ce que nous faisons? Nous leur demandons de constituer un dossier, puisque nous les représentons. Nous allons dans les chambres de résolution de litiges, si ça existe. Lorsqu'on a des décisions, les difficultés que nous rencontrons lorsqu'on a des décisions, c'est-à-dire positives pour nos membres, ça ne se passe pas. Ce n'est pas effectif parce que les présidents des clubs ne veulent pas exécuter. Et vous savez bien que la loi au niveau du football dit que vous devez d'abord épuiser toutes les voies de recours au niveau national avant d'aller soit à la FIFA, soit à la CAF. Mais je peux vous dire que depuis un certain temps, nous avons des cas, des joueurs qui ont eu des gains de cause, mais nous sommes confrontés parce que les présidents des clubs n'exécutent pas. Mais qu'à cela ne tienne, nous continuons à encourager nos membres à respecter leurs obligations. Voilà ce que je peux dire.
So coming on here, pretty much, I mean, on the field, what we notice is that many member associations are not used to dialogue and not used to that stakeholders approach of communicating across the board with the key people. But FIFPro Africa is actually there to support their members, and that's why they are going towards them. They are talking to them on a constant basis so that even players in those cases can share their files and constitute the claims so that they can go for litigation, since clubs, many of them are not respecting their obligation. But as you know, in the regulation part, before going to CAF and FIFA, you need to explore all the opportunities at the national level. And so far, some cases have been won by players, so that gives them confidence, and they need to carry on to ensure that their livelihood is sustained, and that most importantly, justice is being done to their rights as much as the obligations that they have.
All right, Hisham, I'm going to come to you for this question. We saw early on club federations, Mauritania, Tunisia, for example, providing financial support to the players. In your opinion, what more do you think can be done to support following in suit with what they've done?
I think it shows you, for example, the example of Mauritania is pretty telling. Obviously, Mauritania is not the richest federation in the continent, but we do appreciate the good governance of what they are doing, because they are maximizing the resources they have and giving the right priorities. And in this case, they have supported directly players, coach, teams, and so on and so forth. So federations and clubs have two kinds of obligations that they need to think of with two different timelines. The first one is a short-term one. How can you solve the current crisis and stabilize the clubs, the leagues, and the federations so that we can ensure that food is on the table? And then at a later stage, update the long-term vision and try to use this crisis as an opportunity to define African solutions to African problems. So here, at the end of the day, the other federations should follow suit, but the federations are not alone also in the ecosystem. Like my friend Anthony has said, it's the entire ecosystem includes the government, the health authorities, the Ministry of Sport. You need to go also and be talking to the broadcasters, who are the prime revenue generation entities for any federation or club, because they are showing the game live. And you need also to find compromises with the sponsors and so on. So the leagues also needs to be brought together and talk with the clubs representatives, with the players representatives, but this is not always the case. I've seen and read stories about clubs going from the backstage, talking to the sports minister directly without even involving the federation, because they were not happy about certain things. That can only kind of damage more the whole situation. So there needs to be really an understanding where the federation needs to keep its lead, but also have an inclusive dialogue with everybody. And some federations are doing a good job already. Some have issued sanitary guidelines. Some have put in place a calendar of return to play process. what kind of material could be used, what kind of deadlines, and that's why CAF has asked all the federations to come up with their plan. And some have also supported some foreign players that ended up in a country that was not theirs and were abandoned clubs. They went and supported their families and supported them financially. So there's a lot to be done, but at the same time, I believe that while they are doing this important job to stabilize immediately the situation on the short term, there needs to be also time to invest in the rethink of the business model and how to consolidate the long-term revenues, how to engage what is for me the heart of football, the fans, and so on. But we can talk about this.
I was going to say, I'm going to come back to the sponsorship side of things. You touched upon restarting football in Africa. We saw clubs, federations suspending their season or announcing a winner or completely just voiding it. Anthony, can you tell us a bit more about what you make at the national level? Football is already being played, for example, the announcement in Burundi and Tanzania. Can you give us a visual illustration of what we've seen so far? Suspension, as I said, some teams just being announced as winners and other leagues just being void.
Yeah, just to add to what Jeremy and Hisham said, I think one thing is very important. Players in general have a contract. There are certain leagues with players who don't have a contract. And then we should also work on something like a globalization of a standard contract, which is also very important for players to have in general. These are my contribution to it. But as I said, the dialogue is ongoing amongst the stakeholders. Coming back to your question, Mimi, I can give you a certain input about what we have done. We have written to most of the MAs, just for you to know, we never imposed. We wanted to have a plan, a strategy, because we also have to plan or create, better to say, different scenarios of our various competitions. But talking about it, you can see that 23% have annulled their competition. Then you have 36% who have strategy in place and intention to pursue competition, the competition. And then you have as well 31% who are undecided, okay? And then you have 5% who have not started the season. And then you have 5% of the homologation. There you see it on the screen. I go through it again so it's clearer. As I mentioned, 23% of annulled competitions. Then you have the homologation of latest standings with 5%. Then you have 36 who have a strategy in place, an intention to pursue. And then you have 5% who have the season unstarted, as you said. You also mentioned, for instance, Burundi and Tanzania. As I said, we are always in permanent contact. The MAs with the government on ground, of course, they have a better view of the situation than we, but I believe what we give is recommendations. And if we see that something is really not going on well, I believe then we will look for the communication stroke, for the dialogue with the respective MA.
Anthony, can I just ask you your opinion on this? Do you think that football is coming back too soon, as the federations we've mentioned will be restarting in those countries?
Could you repeat the question? Sorry, I didn't hear you acoustically.
In your opinion, do you think that football is returning to play too soon?
You see, an example of Germany. In Germany, which we cannot compare, of course, 100% with the African continent. But I want to talk about the procedure of decision-taking, that all stakeholders were involved, plus the powerful lady, Madame Angela Merkel, and they took a common decision because they had a plan in place. And the plan, as you see live on TV, has been into details respected. Very, very important. We have also put different parties together. FIFA came with a very comprehensive document about how to restart the league, and we, of course, are also represented through our Vice President of the Medical Committee, Dr. Yassin Sergini, and as I mentioned earlier on, there are different working groups who are working together. And what is important that you cannot take a decision without government. Going further across the borders, if you are planning the other competitions like AFCON, Women AFCON, Interclub, we're also creating different scenarios, but don't forget also that if I give you the example of the Chan, when the Chan was supposed to be from the 4th to the 25th of April in Cameroon. But before we even spoke about it, Rwanda and Morocco cancelled all the plans in terms that planes can fly out, etc. So this is something you don't have control over it when there's how you call it, border restriction, etc. So we are waiting. Like we said, the health of the players, the health of the supporters and of the stakeholders is very, very important to us. When we have clear visibility, then I think we can take a proper decision. And in the upcoming future, very soon, the various committees are also going to get together and listen to certain recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. I'm going to come back a bit later to talk a bit more about the football calendar because it's going to be very clogged moving forward. Felix, can I just bring you in? We've talked a lot about health. We also probably should talk about sponsorship because in times like these, many companies are retrenching staff and that will as well affect sponsorship of clubs. How are you managing yourself in terms of sponsorship during this time?
Indeed, there will be a lot of shortfalls, in revenue for clubs everywhere. And but for most so in Africa, it will even be more challenging because most African clubs does not enjoy serious revenue from TV and other etc. So I think it's more difficult in Africa to operate at the moment. Enyimba being a government club, our government has been.
I will come back to Felix a bit later. Hisham, maybe let's bring you in, get your opinion a bit more on this. How can these clubs sustain themselves in terms of sponsorship moving forward? Because as we said, it will be greatly affected in terms of having sponsors.
I think we have Mr. Chairman back, if I'm correct.
Hello?
Felix, do you want to finish your point?
Hello.
Hi,
Yeah,
Felix. Do you want to? Yes, we can hear you very well.
Like I said, as for Enyimba, the government has been has continued to support the club, and that has made also the difference. Otherwise, it would have been much tougher. And moving forward, we hope it won't be this tough as we move ahead. I think where possible, clubs should receive some financial, benefit from their different federations.
Okay, so do you think in terms of like the money, for example, that CAF announced the $10.8 million to help its 54 member associations, do you think that could help you going towards you to help your club in Enyimba and other clubs?
Well, I know it's also very difficult for everyone, including CAF and FIFA, and also federations, but I don't know how that could help. I mean, when you talk about club, it's not just one club. You're talking about like in Nigeria, where we have 20 clubs in the Premier League, and not also other clubs in different divisions. So they found, well, I believe it will go a long way to support the club, but I think the way things are, I think they should do more.
When you say you think they should do more, who are you referring to?
Well, I'm talking about FIFA and CAF.
Okay. Anthony, since you're there, he said, do you want to respond to that?
No, I think we are already contributing in terms of the clubs who played in the last season in the Inter club. There was already an advancement made. And then also, like I said, like you mentioned, with the 10.5 million, there was another good action. Now, as I mentioned, there will be another finance committee meeting where they are going to regroup themselves to think what else they can do. But let's not forget, when we speak about stakeholders, it's not only players. You don't forget the referees, don't forget the coaches, etc., who also have a problem. Some of them count on the money because every weekend they will be playing. You know, some might have good jobs, some might have average jobs, so they're also counting on this money. And this is all additional money. So again, for me, what I believe in has always been a good dialogue and to meet. FIFA has set the example. CAF has also followed with really engaging all the stakeholders to see how best we can support each other.
All right, thank you, Anthony. Felix, what more then you feel should be done to help support Enyimba and other clubs?
Well,
financially,
what we are talking about it. Yeah, hello?
Yep, go on.
Okay. So where the situation is very, very unpredictable, you know, because we don't even know at the moment what the future holds. We are still locked down under the pandemic. It depends on how long it will take. Nobody sure whether it will end in the next 1 or 2 months. And as it continues, it creates more challenge and it becomes more difficult. So I believe, like I said, everything but as football is just about money. You can't run football without money or financial backup. So whatever CAF can do and FIFA, that will be well appreciated by clubs, you know. They have done a lot already. They have set up the staging, but I believe they should also consider the more of the challenge in Africa. It's more challenging to run a football club in Africa than any other place in the world.
Absolutely. Hisham, I'm going to come get you to respond to that with your business background. Money talks, I guess, is a summary as what Felix is saying, that money and football go together. Can business keep faith in African football when it does eventually resume?
Well, yes, money talks, but not only money talks. At the end of the day, whether it's clubs or other stakeholders, they have to be a way of self-reliance. It's good to have CAF on your back with FIFA, but you cannot count on them for a long-term plan or a business plan. So just before I answer you directly to what Tony and Jeremy were saying before, when you know, more than 830 clubs that play in tier competitions in the continent. That's about the 22,000 extra professional players. A statute, about only 45% of those players have a standard contract. This is what FIFA professional report is saying. And the average worldwide is 60%. 20% of them have a collective bargaining agreement when it comes to labor relations. So those things have to change so that when you protect your raw material, a club without the player doesn't exist much. So that needs to be said. When it comes to the business or the faith part, yes, business will keep faith in African football for a simple reason. It's the youngest continent in the world, more than 1 billion people, with entrepreneurship spirit, with the rising internet penetration, and with the crazy love for football that will never die out. So business will always be interested with African football. But then to keep that faith, we need also to have football leaders that lead example, that show good governance, transparency, accountability, and as I said before, African solutions to African problems. So the key requirement right now is to solve the issues of the broadcast partners, because broadcasting is important. But doing that, let's not forget one thing. Football is emotional and fans are dying hungry for football. So while we wait for football to come back, and even when football comes back, let's start proper planning and engage your fans within your own community. I'm, for example, a Raja Casablanca fan, and I follow Italian, English, French, German football. I have space for both. I follow those different kinds of football. So people in Kenya or Tanzania and so on and so forth should engage, though they are hardcore fans or very strong fans of Real Madrid, should find a way to engage them with archiving, with players' involvement, with Facebook involvement, Twitter, call them to provide content. This is digital innovation. People need to think in the long run, because whether we like it or not, the continent going towards the digital era, and the young population that continent and the bright population that has will go towards that area. And then one last point on that is that clubs, together with the leagues and federation, need to always consider what they do for championship as a product. So you need to have proper scheduling. You need to be serious about it. You cannot announce games just before they take place. And also there needs to be a really strong collaboration with the authorities, because the venue needs to be better maintained. I very often listen, people say, we need to build stadia in Africa. Believe me, I've been around. The problem is how to maintain what you already have. You don't need to build thousands of venues. You need already to take care of what you already have and make it a nice environment for people to attend, so that you can generate revenues. So that's in a nutshell what I wanted to say.
Respond to some of the points there that Hisham has made. Do you agree or disagree with them? And also he talked about digital. I know here in the UK, we're looking at possibly in the future trying to stream some of these matches on YouTube, because it's going to be hard for fans to attend at stadiums at the moment. Felix, do you want to respond to Hisham's points?
Hello.
Yes, what do you make of some of the points that Hisham's made?
I think he made a very valid point, and I believe that to be fair to no one prepares for something like this, and is quite very unfortunate that we have this situation. We've already have measures in place in terms of trying to also boost our revenue by merchandising, and also going into partnerships with a lot of people. So I think that is the way to go. Clubs must do more to engage, to sources of generating more revenue in order to complement every other effort where they have been getting money from.
Okay, Gonzalo, can I bring you in real quick for this point that I think would be important, just to kind of quickly summarize in a way key points in terms of players' contracts. What should clubs do? Because we're looking here at the chairman of Enyimba. What should clubs do when their players maybe do not accept their proposals with the struggles that they're having and adapting during COVID-19?
Well, actually,
I don't know.
What should players do, for example, if clubs, let's just say that Enyimba decide to say, okay, we're just going to cut 10%, 20% of your salaries. We're going to do so and so and so recommendations, regulations, have more sponsorship, be financially sustainable moving forward. What can somebody like you advise players who do not accept some of the proposals that some clubs might have, having to adapt in this crisis?
Well, Mimi, this is definitely a very exceptional reality. No one, as already someone mentioned, no one was prepared for this situation. So definitely there's a need for dialogue. There's a need for flexibility. And when we're talking about reduction of salaries, yes, there should be certain, up to a certain extent, some flexibility and some solidarity, of course. But the most important aspect that we have to keep in mind, talking about players, clubs, and football coaches, is that the ideal scenario, and this is what is established in the FIFA guidelines, is to try to reach an amicable settlement. And then, if nevertheless you cannot reach such a solution, then FIFA's guidelines, they approach this matter and they come up with kind of 4 steps for understanding how to address situations like this. So if there's no possibility to reach an amicable settlement, then we have to move on and see if national law or if there are any collective bargaining agreements at a national level that can confirm the legality of that salary reduction. Okay, and if not, what happens if national law does not permit that, or the parties do not reach an agreement? Then it comes to FIFA in order to recognize such, to validate such salary reduction in the future. The jurisdictional bodies of FIFA, namely the dispute resolution chamber regarding disputes involving football players and clubs, or the player status committee involving labor disputes between professional coaches and clubs or national association, then such deduction of salary must be made in good faith, must be reasonable, and must be proportional. And then these jurisdictional bodies will analyze, based on other 5 criteria, whether it is acceptable or not to unilaterally reduce the salary.
Okay. Okay. I just want to ask 2 quick questions before I take in questions from the audience.
Mimi, may I
yes,
just,
very quickly, please, Gonzalo.
Yes. Which I think is very important. I mean, following the example here in Portugal, in which, according to which some clubs, instead of reducing well, they have reduced the salaries by mutual agreement with the players, but they have postponed, they have deferred the payment of a certain percentage in the future. In some cases, depending on the club achieving certain sporting goals, like qualifying for UEFA's competitions or not being relegated. And this could be a valid decision instead of unilaterally imposing the decision.
Okay, thank you very much, Gonzalo. I just want to ask these 2 very quick questions before I take in questions from the audience. Jeremy, I just want to hear from you. This pandemic, nobody predicted, obviously, as I said, this pandemic. Do you think that the pandemic has now gotten players to rethink to be part of a union like yours that could help them during such tough times moving forward?
J'espère que oui. Malheureusement, sur le terrain, de nombreuses associations ou des ligues de football ne sont pas habituées à engager un dialogue franc et constructif avec nos membres pour essayer de trouver une solution commune. La crise est venue agir comme une loupe montrant les problèmes de gouvernance du football. Elle n'a que fait mettre en évidence tout ce que nous savions au niveau de la FIFA. Les syndicats sont les seuls organisateurs dont les intérêts des joueurs sont au cœur de leur mission, comprenez? ils sont essentiels pour apporter des freins et contrepoids afin que les clubs ou certains présidents des clubs n'agissent sans concertation pour prendre des décisions unilatérales lorsque ça concerne les contrats des joueurs. Je voudrais aussi, si vous me permettez, rapidement revenir sur un point que Hicham a bien noté. Je dois dire à Hicham qu'en Afrique, nous avons ce problème de gouvernance. La FIFA et la CAF traitent les joueurs de la même façon. Le problème que nous avons, la FIFA envoie des directives. Quand nous regardons le système de licence club, c'est un système très efficace. Mais le véritable problème au niveau des fédérations ou des ligues, ils n'implémentent pas les principes qui sont dans ce système. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle nous nous retrouvons avec tous ces problèmes. Comme par exemple, les joueurs parfois les joueurs n'ont pas de contrat. Ou bien ceux qui ont des contrats, ces contrats ne sont pas respectés. Certains joueurs n'ont pas de copie de leur contrat. Donc, moi, je pense que la FIFA et la CAF, qui font un travail énorme, doivent effectivement continuer encore à ce que le système qu'ils ont très bien mis en place soit implémenté par leurs associations membres et beaucoup de choses vont avancer, surtout au niveau de la...
Alors, je vais essayer, Jérémy, de me souvenir de tous ces aspects-là, mais résumer, parce que c'est extrêmement important ce que vous dites. Switching to the English part, what Jeremy says is that, well, on the ground, many associations or football leagues are not used to engaging in a frank and constructive dialogue with the FIFPro members to find common solution, and that he regrets. And what the crisis has shown is that it has come to act as a magnifying glass, showing that the governance problems that African football is facing, and it only highlights what FIFPro Africa already knew. So the unions, like the ones of FIFPro within Africa, are the only organizations where the players' interest is at the heart of the mission, and that's why they are essential to provide checks and balances so that clubs do not act without consulting them. And then what he added as well is that from the CAF and FIFA perspective, there's a club licensing system in place, but its implementation is a different reality by the leagues and the federations, because many of them do not implement them in a strict way, and some players don't even have a copy of their own contract. So that is an issue that should be tackled head on, and where it is crucially important to provide that basic protection to the ones that are making the game today. And I hope I have given the essence of what you said.
Yes, I believe you have. Thank you very much. I just want to get quickly to a few questions because we've got what, another 10, 15 minutes. Anthony, I was going to ask you this question next, but somebody has already written in asking the question specifically addressed to you, they say. Andy Quagny, I hope I've said the name correctly. Africa at a crossroad with the effects of this coronavirus. How will the CAF handle all of its competitions this year and next year with the CAF Champions League? As you know, there's also the Confederations Cup still to be played, CHAN still on hold, 2021 AFCON qualifiers, World Cup qualifiers, women's AFCON, etc., etc. You want to give an answer to the person who's been asking that question to you, please, Anthony?
I think I addressed this issue already in the beginning a bit. And what I said about the issue is, of course, we have different working groups who are working with FIFA and the other confederations, because it's very important to be aligned. You cannot take a decision on your own. It can affect the other confederation as well. That's why we have all come together, created working groups. And what is very, very important that we have already created different scenarios, and of course also worst case scenarios. But don't forget, again, we are working in close collaboration with the WHO, and then also when we have better visibility in terms of when all the borders are going to open, when people can travel in a normal way, I think then the adequate organs, bodies, committees will then also take a decision according to the scenarios we provide.
Okay, I also just want to ask you this quick one as well, because we haven't actually covered it, and I think it is important to bring up. Erickson Tamu has asked, most referees are left out at these times. What is happening to referees in the continent? How is CAF working to resolve payments for referees and member associations?
I think you heard me talking about the referees when I spoke about the stakeholders. I mentioned it very, very clearly. And I also said that the finance committee of CAF will have a meeting very, very soon. And there's also part of the relief plan. They will look into it, and then we'll see how best the support can be given. Talking again about players, which is very, very important. President Ahmad, for instance, when he speaks about stakeholders, he always talks about players, referees, etc. And I am a former player. When he brought me on board, of course, it's also to better the relationship between those various bodies or unions and CAF. Immediately, we signed an MOU at our Congress in Sharm el-Sheikh. And whenever there are meetings about certain decisions, the players' representatives are invited. You find them also on respective committees of CAF to add the technical and the technical support and the general experience to it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy, if you're able to answer this as part of FIFPro Africa and as well as a former player, in your opinion, based on the current situation, what is the fate, do you think, of African players looking to seal European deals this year? Is there any, do you think, of improvement?
Well, let me try to answer this in English.
Oh, thank you so much. You, as a former Chelsea player, we want you to speak in English too.
Well, we hope so, because first of all, what I will say that that crisis, it is nobody was expecting that, but I have to accept that, especially in Africa, even before that crisis, the problem was there. The problem of non-payment of salary. Our roles is to try to improve that. As long as we will improve that, footballers will be employer and will be professional, and they will just produce performance on the field. So that is my message to all the president of the club, to tell them that it is important to pay the salary of the player. It is benefit for the club, benefit for everyone, because as long as they produce performances, people will come back to the stadium. So they will sign contract with TV or announcement. So it is important that president or those who organize competition to focus on that.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Felix, can I ask you this question? Maybe you can elaborate a bit more on it. SimPWMB says, very difficult times indeed. Going forward, should leagues protect themselves through insurance? As we saw Wimbledon, Wimbledon tennis did that.
Come again?
Felix, any opinions on that? So at the SimPWMB says, just your opinion, if you can elaborate a bit more. Very difficult times indeed. Going forward, should leagues protect themselves through insurance, similar to what Wimbledon did? As we saw, Wimbledon tennis had already prepared for this pandemic years ago by having a fund.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing, and is in the right direction. I think federations who are the custodians of league bodies should also that approach. I think is a very good idea for federations, because club are already doing theirs. Club, they also have insurance, but it's not the kind of insurance that can cover the entire league. So I believe it is a good thing for federations to get involved in making sure that we secure insurance for teams.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm sorry I can't take more questions than that. Thank you for your input, the panelists. I hope we've given you all watching a bit of an insight and a bit of an idea of what the new normal would look like in African football when we start to get out of this pandemic. Hisham, I will leave you with final words and thoughts.
Thank you very much, Mimi, and most importantly as well, great thank you to our panelists, our legends, Mr. Chairman of Enyimba, you, Gonzalo, for making this happen. And it's an honor for me to do the closing. But what this discussion shows, when I look at the number of questions that are being asked and how people are posing extremely important questions, we could have a discussion of 10 hours. But because we don't have all that time available, but it's already a good start. But I think at the end of the day, what is important is we applaud actions of clubs like the one of Enyimba that maintain paying players and covering the salaries. In a time of crisis, that is very important to consider those aspects and to consider the livelihood of those at the bottom of the pyramid, including the staff, the technicians that work within Club 6 is extremely important. It's also important for the players to know their rights, to know how they can be protected and how they can manage when there are litigations and cases that cannot be solved amicably, would go forward and talk to other people that can protect them with the support of CAF and FIFA. And coming to CAF and FIFA, despite the fact that it's an extremely difficult situation, we have seen their commitment in supporting the entire ecosystem, providing funds, providing guidance, collecting all the information from the different leagues so that they can have the different options at hand. And I guess like my brother Anthony was saying, the executive committee and the leaders will convene to make the relevant decisions about the calendar going forward, because that impacts also all the leagues beneath them and all the different things. And lastly, I would like to say as well that despite this crisis, despite the fact that it cannot say always as well that it's because it's Africa, it's more difficult. We need to reinvent ourselves moving forward in how we can be sustainable in the long run, how we can use the Africanness and identity and culture of Africa to engage with our fans very far from us, but just around us, so that every fan in Africa, while he will always be happy to see European or South American football, will love also to see his own club participating. So innovation is key, digital is key, data is key. Sometimes we talk about the economy of football, but we don't even know the figures. So we need to engage into all of those things. And I hope as well that CAF will help into that data management aspect, and most importantly, to implement what they are already doing, including the club licensing system that I think represents the future of professional football on the continent. But a great thank you once again to our experts for making it happen, to you, Mimi, for such a smooth operating environment, allowing ourselves to discuss. And I do hope that we'll have the opportunity to speak again and to address issues on with optimism and solve moving forward. Thank you very much.